All right, welcome back to another episode of FedSmart. Steven, we're back. We've got some great info for people. We're going to do it a little bit different than some of our previous episodes. Great feedback with a lot of people on our site and our Facebook page where a lot of it is, we've been kind of just doing more benefits and lecturing and things like that, almost like teaching on the first couple. Where you're
People
almost
don't like to
attending
be
a
lectured
webinar.
at, Jesse. They're not into the
Yeah.
lecture halls.
Don't want to be just sit there and talk. We're going to have a conversation and talk through, some more pertinent topics that people are going through in retirement and experiencing and signs of the times. And, we'll be talking about like the Secure Act 2.0 and how that affects federal employees and the changes and things like that. We're just going to go through a lot of really good info, make sure that federal employees get a lot of value out of having our conversations and listening to our podcast. And today we're going to have a conversation about milestone ages, things to be aware of at each milestone age or each step of your career. Some things we've seen working with thousands of federal employees that you can take advantage of at each age, specific like 8 milestone ages, but a few other things that we want to talk about first. And all these milestone ages we're talking about towards retirement planning, federal retirement planning for your federal retirement. What are some milestone ages you want to be aware of? And really, because we're talking about retirement planning, we're going to kind of start at age 50, right? But good news, if you're not 50 yet, we're not ignoring you. There's still things that you can do, and you want to make sure that you're doing to really take advantage of your retirement. And down the road, when you're 60, 65, 55, whatever, and you are able to finally retire, you can look back and thank yourself that you started a lot earlier. And so for those of you,
we actually run appointments for early 40s, late 30s, and it's pretty beneficial, I feel, because they're getting a jump start on just things that people didn't even think about, like TSP contributions, allocations, milestone ages, like we're getting into, things to consider ahead of time. So it's always a good thing. It's always good to start even before 50 and kind of plan things out.
Exactly. Absolutely. Because, the biggest benefit that people have out there that start early, the biggest thing by far that you have is time. Most people that have a very healthy TSP balance or are well prepared for retirement, a high majority of them started back in their 20s or 30s, to have really, really high 7-figure TSP balances are the people that were proactive in their thinking and started in their 20s and 30s, because compound interest and compounding over time is one of the biggest benefits you have when it comes to retirement planning. So for those of you who are listening that are, 18 through 45, especially, a lot of times people in those ages, they're kind of like, I'll get to retirement planning down the road. I don't need to think about it. But the sooner you start, the huge benefit you have of compounding interest over time. So for those of you who are not 50 yet, that's going to be our first milestone age. But if you're not 50, a couple things that you 100% should be doing. The first thing is make sure you're putting at least 5% in your TSP. At least make sure you're at least getting the match and getting that free money. The government matches, if you're putting in 5%, they're going to put in 5%, as a lot of you know, but you'd be surprised how many people are not taking advantage of it. So make sure you put at least 5%, and then whatever you can afford to put in. I know you have to live, you have to feed your family, you have to live today, but whatever you can put above the 5%, please throw it in there. It's going to compound over time. You're going to be really grateful. And the second thing that you really want to make sure you're doing is make sure you're not parked in the G fund. Do not just go into the G fund, say, okay, I don't understand all this investing stuff. I'll figure it out later. I'm just going to park it in the G fund for now. We see a lot of people that have done that. And, if you don't know anything about investing, you don't want to learn things about investing, one thing you can take advantage of is the target date funds. Now, if you're years out from retirement, and again, we don't want to give like general financial advice, everybody should fit in this box, but you definitely want to avoid just parking in the G fund out of fear. Again, because of that compounding interest over time, you're missing out on literally hundreds of thousands of dollars more that you could have by the time you retire. So if you don't know vet investing, you don't want to learn all the different funds, you don't want to look at that, one simple thing you can do is take advantage of a target date fund. Now, I already know I'm going to get a lot of messages and things like that where people say, oh, target date funds, they don't keep up with the S and the C fund, you shouldn't be telling people about target date funds. Again, we're trying to be careful here, because these are people, if we say jump in the S and the C, right, Steven, they're going to stay in that, and then they're going to forget down the road to rebalance and reallocate. And now right before retirement, they can lose a lot of money. So the target date funds are nice, because if you choose a target date, a date on the fund, like the L fund inside the TSP, those are the target date funds. We have L funds. So if you're 30 years from retirement right now, for example, you might want to choose the L 2050 fund, or 2055, even better. And basically, when you think you're going to retire, you're not tied in till 2055, but it's going to invest in the 5 core funds towards somebody who's going to touch the money around 2055. Okay. Then it's going to automatically rebalance and reallocate as you get closer to that. So as you get closer to that date on the fund, I mean. So if you're not 50 yet, please make sure you're putting at least 5% the TSP, and make sure that you're investing and not parked in the G fund. A target date fund is a great fund to park in until you want to learn the different funds to jump in. And last point on that is, a lot of people say, well, I don't want to be in one fund, I don't want to put all my eggs in one basket. You're not. You're creating a portfolio of the 5 core TSP funds, and it's going to rebalance and reallocate in those 5 funds as you get closer to retirement. So if you're not 50, those are the things that you can do. And so, Steven, what's our first, milestone age? What's the first age when we look at retirement planning where people start to get serious usually?
Age 50 is the big one. Age 50, there's a couple things that happen and that you can adjust. But age 50 seems to be the time where statistically the majority of people start planning on retiring. And for good reason, because that's your MRA starts showing up in the 50s, between 55, 57, which we'll get to the next milestone in a second. But age 50 is usually where everyone starts to think about things and get serious.
Right. Yeah. For whatever reason, age 50, like you said, statistically, that's when a lot of us wake up. And with the federal government, when it comes to federal retirement, also age 50 is where we start to see some of our colleagues eligible for retirement. If you have a colleague that's in special provision, that's law enforcement, firefighter, something like that, they can go at age 50 with 25 or more years of service, actually 20 or more years of service. They can go at any age with 25 years. But at age 50, a special provision, if they just have 20 or more years, they're eligible. So we start to see some people, eligible for retirement, talking about retirement. A lot of people start to get serious because they hear of something called the catch-up provision, where you can start throwing some more money in the TSP. You've got your TSP contributions, and then you can throw in more if you're 50 or older, called the catch-up provision, right, Steven?
They just raised that this year too, which is really important for everyone to know. And as Jesse talked about before, what you can do before you're 50, part of that is the contributions. And once you reach age 50, you're allowed a catch-up contribution, meaning those who might have gotten a late start or who really want to maximize their contributions into their TSP can add an additional $7,500 per year in their contributions to the TSP. And a lot of people might say, well, what does that equate to pay period wise? And it's $288.46 per pay period additional you can contribute to your TSP. So even if you're younger than 50, keep that at the forefront of your mind, because life changes. And as you get older, a lot of times you have more money that you can throw at your investments at your TSP. And so whenever you might think, okay, I'm starting to get some extra money, either through pay raises or whatever else, always think about contributing more into your
college
TSP.
or
Exactly.
all kinds of reasons.
Yeah.
Some people say, wait a minute, I have less money as I get older. But some people, maybe some money comes available, you pay off your kids are out of college, you're not paying for college anymore, you pay off loans, pay off student loans. Around 50, sometimes people have additional money, and instead of going and buying that new car, or maybe upgrading houses or things like that, keep your expenses low and throw some more in your retirement accounts. Because like Steven said, you do have that catch up provision that we're able to start throwing some more at age 50 as well, that you can consider. Also at age 50, a thing to consider is your federal life insurance. If you have optional coverages that go up around 50 is where you'll start to see it. All of a sudden it's like, well, there's a lot more coming off my check here. What's happening? And your option B is especially when you hit 50, that's where it really jumps up, and then it's going to jump up again in the future, as we'll talk about. But start to look at all your life insurance options. You want to make sure that you're not making yourself insurance poor, where maybe you have too much life insurance, you're paying too much per month. And that's another place where maybe you can lower your life insurance, maybe just to the basic if you don't have people dependent on you, and you can throw some more in the TSP and create some more that way. So age 50, there's a lot to consider, and to know about, and really starts our milestone ages in retirement planning.
Yeah, and to kind of go back to the contributions too, people might say, well, that's great that that's the catch up, but what's the normal contribution? A lot of people don't know what they are allowed. That actually was raised as well. You're allowed 22,500 per year into your TSP as a contribution. So those 50 or over are allowed a total of 30,000 if you add that 7,500 onto there, which leads us into the next age band, Jesse, which would be 55. So you want to run us through some of the big things that happen there?
Yeah. So at 55, there's actually quite a few big things that do happen in the federal retirement space. 55 is where most regular FERS and SIRS could be first eligible for retirement. On the SIRS side, for those of you who are still CSRS, if you have 30 or more years of service at 55, you're eligible for a full unreduced retirement. Now, FERS, your eligibility with 30 years depends on something called your MRA. And we've talked about it on many podcasts, on many posts. So most of you have heard of your MRA, which is your minimum retirement age, based on the year that you were born. And your MRA becomes between the age of 55 and 57. And that's where you could go with an unreduced pension if you have 30 or more years of service. Or maybe you can go with a reduced pension if you have 10 or more years of service. And there's a lot of things with the MRA that come into play, which again is between 55 and 57. So 55 really kicks off that MRA. For those of you who are special provisions and you're already retired, at your MRA, you might have earnings limits now, although they're doing away with that with a law that was recently passed. But you really want to be aware of what your specific MRA is. If you don't know, Google FERS MRA, a chart will pop right up, or on our Facebook page or our websites, we have the MRA chart as well, which will show what it is. And again, if you have 30 or more years of service, might be time to go. So if you did some planning back at 50, you could go at 55 to 57, or go with a penalty if life takes you that way. You want to be aware of that. Also, at 55, there's a couple other things to consider. Anything on the retirement eligibility that I'm missing on 55, Steven, or we move on to the life insurance?
55 is a good one too. If you're able to retire, or if you separate from service in general at age 55 or over, the year you're turning 55 or over, you can access your TSP without a 10% penalty as well. So that's another really good thing that happens, and to consider if you are going out. You don't have to wait till 59 and a half. We hear a lot of people say, oh, I can't, I'm locked in till then. Not if you separate from service at 55 or older. Another
yeah, the year you're turning 55 even too. Yeah, so the year you're turning 55. So if it's like January and later in June you're turning 55, if that year you're turning 55, like Steven said, you can access the TSP and only pay taxes. You won't pay that 10% penalty, and that's a great point. And also another exciting news for you special provisions, that was age 50 where you could access it penalty free. With new legislation for you special provisions, if you're eligible for retirement at all, either the 25 years with any age or 20 years at age 50 and above, you can access your TSP with no penalty now. You don't have to wait till you're 50. But regular federal employees like FERS, if you are turning 55 or older the year you retire, you are able to touch that TSP, which really helps with the planning and the scheme of things. And that's a great point, Stephen. You want to be aware of being able to touch the TSP as early as the year you're turning 50, 55. So
yes, yeah, and again, the pesky age bands of option B come into play. It gets more expensive every 5 years, and then of course, like Jesse mentioned, at age 50 is really where you're going to start to notice it. And then if you haven't noticed it at 50, wait till 55, because again, option B goes up significantly again. So it's really important to start looking
it
at.
actually even doubles at 55. It doubles.
Yeah.
So it went up at 50. And then now at 55, your cost is going to double. And most people, because it comes right off your check, you don't even notice that. So if you didn't make some decisions on life insurance at 50, you definitely want to start making some decisions at 55. And we're not saying cancel it, drop it. You know, you may not qualify for outside policies, things like that. But you want to start making some decisions on how much life insurance you need, because at age 55 is where your pocketbook and your paycheck, you really start to see those differences, like you said, especially on that option B, to be clear. And to be really, really clear, to make sure your basic coverage, which is your death benefit, is your salary plus $2,000. That one does not go up as you get older. And there is the ability to keep a portion of that for free in retirement. So some people go, well, my life insurance is getting expensive, I'm just going to cancel it all. Well, we're talking about your optional coverages on the life insurance. Your basic, be really careful before you cancel that, because it can be a really, really good deal and maybe something you want to keep for final expenses and things like that, to make sure that we're clear. And again, that's why everything we tell you, that's a good point too, Stephen, of a good time to mention, like everything we tell you, there's exceptions, there's things to know. This is why Stephen and I always tell people, be really careful on, listening to general advice. You hear something we say, and then you just go and cancel all your FEGLI. Well, what we want to do is make sure you're educated and you know the generalities and the 30,000 foot view of your benefits. But before you make a life altering decision and, put plans in place or remove plans, things like that, we highly, highly recommend that you talk to somebody one-on-one, because there's all kinds of things to know. And then, like I said, exceptions to the exception and consequences of some of your decisions. So as we go through this information, before you just act rash and jump on something, make sure you're talking to somebody who knows what they're talking about and can help you one-on-one.
Yeah, great point. And with life insurance especially, because that's not something, if you cancel, you can jump right back into. There's very, very rare open seasons. That's not something that happens every year. So like Jesse's saying, just make sure you know what you're doing, or talking with someone that does, that can guide you. Now we go to the fun one, or potentially fun one, is 59 and a half. That's another big milestone, because it gives you some more options as far as your investing goes. So you want to kind of walk us through how that works, Jesse?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So a couple things, again, just as a reminder, if you're retiring and you retired at age 55, or the year you're turning 55 or older, you can touch your TSP prior to 59 and a half without the penalty. Now, the reason 59 and a half is burned into all of our brains is because across the board, most retirement accounts, IRAs, 401ks, annuities, a lot of different accounts that are geared towards retirement, you cannot touch them penalty free until age 59 and a half. So now all of your other accounts that you might have outside the TSP that are in IRAs, or maybe an old 401k or a spouse's 401k, if you're retired, you can touch those at 59 and a half and not pay a penalty. If it's taxable, you only pay taxes on what you pull out. If you have a Roth account and you've had the Roth for 5 or more years and you're 59 and a half or older, now you can get all the earnings tax-free as well. So all your withdrawals from the Roth will be tax-free. And then also, if you're not retired yet, you're still working, you're hanging on till your 60s to retire, or maybe beyond. If you're still working, you can do age-based in-service withdrawals from your TSP. So if you're still working, you are able to make a withdrawal, not a loan, but an actual withdrawal from your TSP while you're still working. And you can either pull it out, do some renovations, pay off some debt, whatever you want to do, take a trip, or you can roll it into an IRA if you'd like. But once you're 59 and a half or older and you're still working, you do have a lot of flexibility with your investments, and you can start looking at some things for the future or current situations that you have. 59 and a half really opens up a lot of opportunities to pull from some accounts that maybe you couldn't pull from before.
Yeah, and one thing to keep in mind, if you're pulling from your traditional TSP, there will be taxes. So, it's something to keep in mind. But I'm glad you brought up the Roth aspect of it, because that is a really kind of cool thing. If you'd been contributing to your Roth and had it 5 years, all distributions are tax free. So that's a really good thing to keep in mind, and also something to keep in mind for you younger listeners, as far as possibly considering contributing to the Roth TSP. So anything else on 59 and a half, or we go into?
Those are the key things. There's other, like I said, kind of exceptions to the exceptions, things to know, but those are what you really want to understand on the investing side. So really, we just jump 6 months later now. We talk about age 60 as our next milestone. And why the 6 month difference? What's the big deal about 60, Steven?
Yeah, the big deal there is the fact that reaches another milestone potential threshold for people to retire. Those who are age 60 with at least 20 years of service are eligible to retire with an unreduced pension and get the supplement. So that's another pretty exciting thing for those who are approaching 60. Now, when we say that, sometimes it makes sense, or it always makes sense to look at your options, because if you make it 2 more years, you could potentially have a higher pension computation. But age 60 is where you're eligible to retire with 20 years of service. And then again, FEGLI is affected once again. You want to go over that one?
Yeah. So FEGLI, if you didn't hear us at 50 or 55 or happen to see us at age 60, is where FEGLI, you really feel the pain. So at 50, it jumped up a lot. 55, it doubled in cost. And then age 60, it more than doubles again. So it gets very, very expensive. So your birthday present from OPM and your FEGLI is happy birthday. Now you're getting older, and
it's really
a big risk. Yeah, here's a car payment essentially, because you're a big risk to us to insure you. And so now your costs are extremely expensive on your FEGLI option B. If you are even somewhat healthy or poor health or healthy, you can really get a lot of savings by getting a policy on the outside. I mean, if you're healthy, it almost never makes sense to stay with that option B and not acquire a policy on the outside. So you really want to be aware of that, because at age 60, basically the cost per thousand of insuring you really, really skyrockets. So again, take a look at your leave and earnings statement and see what your FEGLI is costing. Over the 19 years I've been doing this, I mean, I have talked to so many people. One quick example, I have one guy that unfortunately his wife had passed away, his kids were older, and he was had a pretty high salary. He says, "Oh, I don't have FEGLI optional." So, well, let's double check. We took a look at his pay stub, and per month, not per pay period, but per month, he was spending $950 on his FEGLI per month on something he didn't need, because he didn't have somebody financially dependent on his salary, and he wouldn't be a financial impact if he passed away. All he really needed was his basic, and he was floored. He was convinced he didn't have option B, didn't keep an eye on it. He was about 61, I think, and he was paying $900 a month for his option B. And again,
oh man,
that's just one example. I have many examples of people that are like, holy cow, I'm paying what for how much? So take a look at that. We can't emphasize that enough to keep an eye on your option B and what it's going up to. Now, so like Steven said, at 60 with 20 or more years, to go back real quick, you can get the supplement. And sometimes getting that supplement can be a really big value and worth going before you hit 62. And we forgot to mention earlier, at your MRA, if you go with your MRA and 30 plus years, you also get the supplement back then as well. So either time that you're eligible for an unreduced pension, you can get the supplement until age 62, which brings us into our next milestone age. And arguably, when it comes to retirement planning, one of the biggest ages to consider when we're talking about age 62, because there's a lot of things, Stephen, that happen at age 62. Like, what's the first one that we want to talk about there?
Well, yeah, like you said, there's just a ton of things to go over. We're going to hit the key points. And the first one, of course, is retirement eligibility. With 5 years of service at age 62, you can go out with an unreduced pension, keep your health benefits, all that good stuff. But like what we talked about at age 60, if you wait 2 more years, if you had 20 years, in that case, if you were 60 years old and you had 18, 19 years of service, if you wait to reach 62 and you have over 20 years of service, they give you a higher pension computation. So instead of every year you work, you're getting 1% towards your high three, they give you 1.1% or about a 10% higher pension computation to reward you for your long service and working into your 60s.
Right. And, some people hear that and they go, okay, each year before counts as 1%. If I'm 62 and I have 20 or more years of service, it counts as 1.1. It doesn't really excite me. And
I'm out of
sometimes
here.
you also see on Facebook or social media or other gurus, they go, oh, don't wait, it's not worth it, things like that. Well, sit down and calculate it for yourself. Some of you that have 35 or more years or 30 years or 25 years or more, and you get the 10% higher computation, sometimes it can be a really big deal, or at least for you. I mean, you can only decide specifically if it's worth staying for or not. But I mean, I've talked to people, and I know you have, Stephen, that were at 61 and they're about ready to go. We did some calculations, and waiting those last 12 months could be a $600 more difference, or $200, several $100 a lot of times more, which could pay for your FEHB, your health benefits for the rest of your life potentially, or, sometimes waiting just 24 more months or 12 more months or whatever can increase your monthly pension for the rest of your life by a lot. And we're not saying everybody should go at 62, but you definitely want to be aware of the difference that you would get, because it helps either way. The way I tell people is, well, now if you look at it at 60 and you go, well, if I waited till 62, I'd get $200 more a month. It's not worth it. I'm ready to go. I'm going to ride off into the sunset, not just walk away, but run away. Now Or you look at it and you go, well, I would get $600 more a month. You know what? That's worth putting up with my job for another 12 months or 24 months to get you to 62. So just be aware of that. But that is a huge point to look at. Do I want to go at 62 with 20 or more years of service?
Yeah, I don't know what it was about last year, but I'd say everyone I brought that up to, they didn't care. They were like, I'm out of here. But
Yeah.
again, it's better to know, right? It's better to plan. It's better to know your numbers and at least know your options. But
Right.
another big thing, Jesse, is Social Security. At 62 is when you're first eligible. You want to run them through that?
Right. Yeah, exactly. So for those of you who have retired prior to 62, you're getting the supplement. The supplement is going to stop at 62. Okay. Whether you take Social Security or not, and you do not have to take Social Security, but the supplement stops. Also, prior to 62, before I jump into Social Security real quick, one thing to know too, if you're regular FERS prior to 62, you are not getting cost of living adjustments. Okay, so if you were retired prior to
That's a great point.
62, every time there's a COLA that comes out, and I get a lot of questions on that right now, because we finally didn't get a diet COLA. We actually got a full sugary fat COLA that came out this year. Anybody that's regular FERS under 62, you're not getting cost of living adjustments yet. But then when you do turn 62, you are going to get COLAs. Now your supplement is going to stop if you're getting the supplement. Then you can elect to take Social Security or not. Or if you are retiring at 62, you can take Social Security if you want to. At age 62 is when you're first eligible for Social Security. So you're eligible for what they call a reduced benefit. It's a portion of your Social Security, and you can see what your Social Security benefit would be at ssa.gov. You can create a login and see what your Social Security benefit would be, what you would get at 62, 63, your full retirement age, which we'll talk about in a minute. But anyway, it's when you're first eligible. Now, if you are getting Social Security at 62 until your full retirement age with Social Security, which we'll talk about in a minute. You have an earnings limit. Okay, so you're limited on how much you can earn when you're drawing Social Security and when you're drawing the supplement prior to Social Security. And what's funny is we're just coming into 2023, and I just posted about the 2023 limits on what that's going to be for this year. And I can't remember off the top of my head. So I'm going to look at my post here real quick. But
20,500 maybe, something like that.
Yeah, it's right around there. But to give them the exact number, so it's 21,240 per year is what you can earn. So 21,240 of gross income, not your pension, not withdrawals from TSP, things like that, but gross income. If you are working part-time or you're going to go get another job, if you're going to earn well above that 21,000 and change, don't take Social Security yet, right? Wait on Social Security. So 62 as of now, 2023 here, that's when you're first eligible to take Social Security if you'd like to. You can go ahead and turn that on if you want to, whether you're retiring or if you have been retired, you can elect to get it at 62 or not. Yeah, well, it's with 62, like I said, we have a lot of things to consider at that time, but and that's why we talked about it for a while. But 62 is where an average number of federal employees retire. 62 is a very, very common age. So you want to take a look at that. And if you've planned ahead, then you should know, do I want to touch my Social Security? Do I want to leave it alone? You talk to, 5 people, 5 of them are going to say, take your Social Security. Another 5 are going to say, wait on it. Only for you specifically can you decide when it's best to take your Social Security, depending upon your circumstances, goals, and needs. So again, another good thing to talk through with somebody of when should I start my Social Security?
Be aware too, if you go on ssa.gov and you see your numbers, you might wind up working longer. There's been a lot of times where we've run appointments and they're like, yeah, I thought I was going out at 62 and starting it, but you get a pretty big bump, which we'll get into here in a little bit once you reach your full retirement age. So there's something to be aware of, but that is such a good planning tool, going on there, seeing what to expect and plan out your ages for when you want to start your Social Security, because it is a crucial point or crucial part of a federal employee's retirement. It's part of that 3-leg income system. So the next threshold or the next key age would be age 65. And now we get to talk about Medicare. Yay. So
yeah,
you want
exactly.
to go through the different parts to that?
Right. Yeah. So if you're 65 and either you're still working or you're retired, either way, you're now eligible for Medicare. Okay. And there's a couple parts of Medicare that initially you want to make a decision on. There's Medicare A and Part B. Medicare A covers hospitalization if you're inpatient hospitalization, and Medicare Part A you've paid for with Medicare taxes your whole career. And so there's no cost for Medicare Part A. So whether you're working or retired, at 65, you want to turn on Medicare Part A. There's no reason not to take it. You already paid for it. Then there's Medicare Part B. If you're not working or you've separated from the government, and in most cases, you have to take Part B when you're first eligible, or you'll have a penalty later on. So you want to know, am I going to take Part B or not?
It's a big penalty.
If you're still working, yeah, and it's a big penalty. It's 12% per year more for the rest of your life. So if you waited 5 years, started it at 70, you're paying 60% more in cost for the rest of your life compared to somebody who took it right away. So you really want to have that decision made prior to turning 65. And if you're still working, you don't have to take Part B yet. You can wait on Part B and get that down the road when you separate. And when you get it down the road, there won't be a penalty if you were still working. So Medicare 65 is when you're first eligible for Medicare, and that's what you want to be aware of. There are all kinds of options. You can keep your Medicare and your FEHB, and they work together. Medicare pays the first part, then your FEHB pays the rest. You can look at other options like Medicare supplements, Medicare Advantage plans on the outside. But make sure when you're making that decision on what you should do with Medicare, that you're talking to somebody who knows the federal system in and out. You ask them a few questions and you can tell right away. They know the FEHB system, they know the FERS system. Don't go to like one of those lunch and learns and go to a Medicare supplement or Medicare Advantage. A lot of times those people are salesmen, and some of them even even when they're ethical, they can sometimes make decisions for federal employees that are irreversible and can kick you out of your FEHB, and you can't get back into your FEHB in retirement. So before you make any kind of decisions, like I said, really make sure that the person you're talking to can show you in writing what they're telling you and can back up, because there are some good options. I mean, there are options where maybe you could jump into a Medicare Advantage and then suspend your FEHB and then jump back into your FEHB if you needed to. But again, that's certain type of plans. There's certain things to know about, the pros and cons of that. So again, if you're looking at your Medicare options, 100% make sure that that person that you're talking to knows the federal health system before you make any kind of irreversible decision. So 65, that's when you're first eligible for Medicare. But 65 also has a few other things that start to happen, like Social Security, full retirement age, potentially, Stephen. Most people are kind of already past that, but you're
Yeah,
talking about
usually
Social
that's
Security, full retirement age.
right. And we kind of touched on it before when we were talking about age 62 as social security. But for the most part, you're going to be falling within that 66 to 67 range to get full retirement age for Social Security. And that has a couple of benefits. First off, of course, your monthly payment is higher. If you wait till your full retirement age and you start your Social Security at that point, you'll be earning a considerable amount more compared to 62, which you'll see on your statement if you pull that up. But also, if you are working, it's a pretty cool thing because you can make as much as you want in the private sector, or even if you're working for the government, and it doesn't affect that Social Security benefit. Anytime you're taking Social Security before your full retirement age, you have that earnings limit. But if you wait till full retirement age and then you start taking it, you can make as much as you want and it won't ever be reduced.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So once the thing is you've hit your MRA, your full retirement age. See, even I've got all these things
FRA,
swimming
right?
around in my head.
Full retirement.
Yeah, FRA, full retirement age, not your MRA. We've graduated now to FRA, your full retirement age. And that is based on, like Stephen said, your year of birth. So it's different for everybody. Find out what your full retirement age is, and it could be like 66 and 6 months. They can't have some months on there sometimes, and that's your full retirement age. But like Stephen said, there's no income limit. So know what your full retirement age is, and then maybe you want to take it while you're still working, start throwing it at your mortgage, pay off your mortgage before you retire, things like that. But it's something to be aware of. And with the Social Security world especially, it's an important factor in a milestone age with Social Security you really want to be aware of.
Yeah, and that tops out at 70, which I guess would be another key age that we can kind of add in here. Once you reach age 70, that Social Security benefit, if you wait to take it after that fact, isn't getting any higher. So you've been paying into it for a lot of years. It's probably time to start taking it.
Well, and it maxes out at 70, like you said. So there's no reason as you said, so if you're not taking it, there's absolutely no reason to not at least turn it on at 70. They're going to contact you and turn it on automatically anyway. It's the highest your Social Security benefit will ever be. Go ahead and start it at 70 if you haven't started it already. So that's kind of a milestone age 70, and it used to be a bigger milestone age because in the past it used to be also when you would have to start pulling from your investments, your retirement accounts that are tax qualified. It used to be, I want to be clear, it used to be that you have to start it at 70 and a half, right? So 70 was a milestone age because that's the max Social Security. And then it used to be the required minimum distribution, but now they pushed it back to age 72. And they're actually pushing that back even more with legislation that just passed. They're going to push that back next year to 73, and then it's going to slowly go up by the time it's 2023, that the MRD age is going to be age 75. So to be clear, what we're saying on that is if you're not pulling from your traditional TSP, traditional IRA, old 401k, some kind of tax qualified retirement account, you have to start pulling something. Now, people all the time say, okay, well, I have to pull out my TSP by 72 or the required minimum distribution. No, you're just required to pull a certain amount each year. Your favorite Uncle Sam, your greedy Uncle Sam wants you to pull a piece of it. So you have to start pulling taxes or paying taxes, I mean, on your amount. So for example, if you have $100,000 in your TSP, they might say, this is just an example, that you need to pull $3,900 for this year and satisfy the required minimum distribution. So for this year, you have to make a withdrawal of at least gross 3,900 in my example and pay taxes on it. Then you've satisfied the RMD, the required minimum distribution. If you don't pull your RMD next year, you'll have a 50% tax penalty on what you pull because you didn't satisfy the RMD. So you want to be aware of required minimum distributions in your retirement account. And so that's our last milestone age is 72 and above because they're changing it, but RMD age, we'll call it. That's where you want to be aware of it. You want to make some plans, hopefully way ahead of that. If you have Roth money or money in a savings account, those you don't have RMDs. So maybe you can do some RMD planning with a professional ahead of time so you have less to pull, less taxes to pay, things like that, or you know what you're going to do with your required minimum amounts you have to pull. Some people are like, Jesse, I do not have that problem at all. I'm going to pull long before 72. But for some of you, you want to have a plan in place on what you're going to do prior to your RMDs. So again, with all these different ages and milestones, there's a lot to consider. There's a lot to know, and other ages to be aware of. But those are really the milestone benchmark ages when it comes to federal retirement planning that we really want to be aware of. And you can see there's a lot of information. So that's why kind of talking through with a professional one-on-one is always a great idea to make sure you got a good understanding of what you're looking at specifically for you. So Stephen, I know that we've got a few years till our milestone ages, but
too long, man.
A lot of good information. Yeah. People ask, when are we going to retire? It's like, I don't know if I can at this point. I've got federal employees have my cell phone number at this point. So no matter where I go, I'm going to be helping federal employees forever. So
yeah. Well, yeah, so that does it for the important ages to consider. I hope everyone had good holidays and that you're holding strong on your New Year's resolutions. And we'll catch you on the next one.
Thanks, guys. Catch you on the next one.
FedSmart podcast is meant for informational purposes only and should not be taken as financial advice. FedSmart, Jesse Black, Steven Puckett, and FedWise retirement planners are not affiliated with any government agency or OPM. Jesse Black offers securities through Creative One Securities LLC, member FINRA SIPC, and Jesse Black and Steven Puckett offer advisory services through Creative One Securities LLC, an investment advisor. FedWise Retirement Planners and FedSmart are not affiliated with Creative One Securities LLC. For more information, you can visit fedwiseretirement.com.